Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
How was the Southern Gothic Festival?
Fun. It was good. Yeah,
Yeah?
they did it at the Revolutionary War thing there in Camden. If you've ever, I don't know if you've ever been there or noticed it. But
Did you have a chance, Todd, to hook up with a nice goth baddie?
that would have been nice, but no, unfortunately.
But this is not a black lipstick podcast.
No, it's Cinema Chop Shop. We're a movie podcast where we get together every 2 weeks or so. We talk about movies and such. And I'm your host, Shawn. I'm joined with by Travisito.
I'm
Thank
here
you.
as well.
The stalwart Travisito. Joey Poole.
I am here as
welcome
well.
back. And our long lost
Panel member.
panel member / on strike labor union
been a while
organizer.
for
Did you come to terms?
I wandered out of the foliage just a little bit ago, just in time to make the episode. Yeah.
I don't know if you've listened to any of the interim podcasts, but we've been talking about how you've been on strike this whole time.
Well, while we're talking to Todd, I have a special thing for him. Have you seen the most recent cover of AARP magazine?
I have not. No.
Well, your boy's on here, and he's looking great.
Okay, let's see.
We've got Sylvester Stallone
Sly. Yeah.
on the cover, and
Man.
he looks like he was stung by 17 bees in the face
He
at the
does.
same time.
And he's
He
allergic.
does. Man, those cheeks are, you
Puffy.
could bounce a quarter off of them.
He looks like
Yeah.
some guy named Vinny who picks up chicks by pretending to be
Sylvester
Stallone.
Stallone.
yeah.
You
Sly's
know?
my cousin.
That's Frank Stallone.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like, got a nice blazer on,
You
too.
can keep that.
You can put that up over your bed.
All right.
All right, it's October. Spooky season. And this year we decided we were going to dip our toe into folk horror.
Yeah, a little bit of a different direction. We've talked a bit about folk horror in the past, but never done dedicated episodes.
Right. So this episode we're talking about pre-1999 type folk horror.
So Blair Witch, yes. Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, no.
No. So yeah, folk horror typically we associate with the British folk horror, but of course it goes deeper and further back than that. You've got a lot of Japanese horror that kind of bleeds into that. A lot of Scandinavian movies where they're drawing upon their history and their lore in some of these stories, and that's really pretty much what folk horror is dipping into the old ways,
Right.
the off the beaten path,
And
type
especially
settings.
with those Scandinavian films, the juxtaposition and contrast between the rise of Christianity and the old gods is very prevalent in these movies. I think it is part of the backdrop that kind of adds tension.
It's hard. It's hard to define in just a matter of a few words. It's kind of like pornography, though. You know it when you see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that, like, by its broadest definition, folk horror would be just horrific tales based on folklore. But that's a huge umbrella, and
course,
that
yeah.
encompasses most of horror, if you think
Right.
about it. I mean, like
Right.
The Wolfman. We don't think of that as a folk horror, but certainly werewolves, vampires are all based on, like, folk tales from...
Well, and
all
oftentimes what you
different
see, not necessarily, not in all the movies. Certainly, some movies are set in the time period in question. But two of the ones we'll talk about today, Wicker Man and Pinda's Fin, have the modern world infiltrated by the
Right.
old ways of doing things.
I mean, even like Pet Cemetery can be considered folk horror, and that's not typically what you would spring to mind as like top of mind kind of folk horror.
I
Type
think
stories.
that one of the defining characteristics for me, and I'm paraphrasing this from the documentary. What's the name of that documentary we watched?
Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched: A History of Folk Horror, 3 hours long.
Yep.
Okay.
And go
Well,
ahead.
I was going to say, I was kind of cobbling this together from several of the speakers in that one. There's two elements to me that, like, beyond just based on folk tales and superstition and lore, is that one, you have almost always someone is underestimating in some way some insular culture.
Yeah.
Whether it's a setting that's like very physically remote, or whether it's like a subculture that's impenetrable with its own sort of set of like beliefs and whatnot. So there's part of it, and then somebody, and I wish I could remember who this is in the documentary, but he says this much more eloquently than I'm going to say it. But he says that one of the defining characteristics is that we like to romanticize the past, but in folk horror, the
You
past
demonize
is the
the
past
past.
for a reason.
Yeah.
And we think about, like, you know, how horrific the world would have been with these worldviews in place, I guess.
And there's a neat segment or a couple of segments rather, in that documentary where they talk about the Haitian voodoo culture and those types of films, and also the trope of things being built on Indian burial grounds. That is folk horror in and of itself.
So in that definition, Poltergeist would be folk horror.
Could be.
And really, where do you draw the line in terms of storytelling? What is folklore and what is not? Because, I mean, how do you define that?
Well, you have some, like the movie I'm going to talk about today is based on a very specific real culture. But I think that's, and like the movie we're going to talk about next week, The Ritual, I'm not giving too much of a spoiler there, is based on like Scandinavian Norse mythology and whatnot. But sometimes I think folk horror can be based on almost fictional cultures,
totally.
as long as it's, because like if you think about it,
Like Children of the Corn is completely made up.
Yeah,
but
I
it
was gonna say
borrows.
cult
But it
horror,
borrows.
but yeah.
It borrows from certain aspects of some of these fringe religions and fringe practices. So
Or the mid-'90s movie with Tom Selleck and Don Amici, Folks. Have you seen Folks? It was horrible.
Okay.
wow.
that counts. I think for me, like one of the things that I can relate to this so hard is like that folk horror for me. The quintessential folk horror moment is when you realize the protagonist realizes that he has underestimated and is inside of this culture that he does not understand and is probably not welcome in.
So the fish out of water thing.
Yeah, and I don't know.
And
that's
think
one
that,
of the things that draws me to
and I
it,
think
too.
that our feature film really encapsulates that whole feeling, and that is, of course, 1973's The Wicker Man, directed by Robin Hardy, starring Edward Woodward, Britt Eklund, Diane Salento, Ingrid Pitt, and then, of course, Christopher Lee.
Yes. I feel like you can't talk about folk horror without talking about The Wicker Man.
Yeah, we've talked about this movie before on the show, but I felt it was such a crystallized folk horror movie that we kind of needed to lead off with this one.
Certainly not the first ever but that you could trace to be as a folk horror movie, because like I said, it goes all the way back to like the Universal monsters and Dracula and things like that, you could argue. But I think The Wicker Man kind of, like Shawn said, crystallizes like what we think of as folk horror,
Right.
especially European folk horror.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the plot of this movie. It all starts out with a very straight-laced, devout Christian police sergeant named Neil Howie.
Howie.
He gets an anonymous letter claiming a young girl named Rowan Morrison's missing on the remote Scottish island of Summerisle, purely fictitious. He flies out to investigate, but from the moment he lands, the whole place feels off. The islanders they're cheerfully pagan, extremely free-spirited community led by the charming but unsettling Lord Summerisle. A very unhinged Christopher Lee plays that role. They deny the girl even exists, even her supposed mother.
Right.
And-
Everybody's gaslighting him.
Totally. As how he digs deeper, he's constantly clashing with the bizarre rituals, their explicit lessons about fertility, and the general vibes of a town that has completely rejected Christianity. He becomes convinced that they're hiding Rowan, probably to use her as a human sacrifice to appease their old gods for a good harvest, as their crops have been failing. We should mention that this island, is known for their apples. It's kind of like the export for the island to the mainland, but they've obviously had a bad year. The whole movie is a big slow burn. It's an increasingly frustrating detective story for Howie. He's the ultimate fish out of water, as Travis mentioned. He's a virgin,
Yes.
which is unusual, even by 1970s standards.
Well, he says that he doesn't believe in it before marriage.
Yep, he's a teetotaler. He's a man of strict moral codes, surrounded by people who are basically having an island-wide constant Mayday party.
Yeah, it's a big orgy.
Yeah.
Lots of TNA in this movie, especially from Britt Eklund,
The lovely Britt Eklund.
who was a Bond girl.
Actually, she's kind of naked in that scene, but not always. There are 2 other body doubles.
The ass
that were
shots
used.
are, yeah.
The ass shots were one person, and then there's a shot of her lying down where you don't see her head; it's someone else. So she wasn't completely all about that, but very sexy scene nonetheless.
Yes.
Very sexually charged. That whole
And,
song
and
about
poor Howie having to, she's beckoning Howie to come next door and
Literally
get
come.
deflowered.
Right.
Because we see in an earlier scene that apparently the innkeeper's daughter, who Britt Eklund's character plays, her part of her role in the community is to deflower the young men. In one scene, they bring a young man to her for that purpose. He listens to it, and then in a subsequent evening, she beckons to him to come over, and he's
beating on the walls
Yes.
because the siren song is calling him, and he's having to resist.
I would not have wanted to change his sheets the next day. I'll tell you that much.
When the
Well, he could have ended his whole plight there too, because then he wouldn't have worked. I'm not spoiling anything. I hope.
so that's what we're saying is, isn't it kind of a test?
They're giving him a chance.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a test to see.
I don't know
if
if
They
he
have to make sure
remains
he's a pure virgin. That
Yeah.
he'll,
So that's kind of spoiling the twist.
I was about to say, we'll get into some spoilers here, so if you've not seen the movie, don't listen to anything else we're
We'll
going to
watch
say.
it first, and then
Yeah, but it all culminates during the island's big May Day festival. How he manages to sneak into the procession as Punch.
Yes.
Everybody's got costumes and disguises on. He knocks out the bar manager slash hotel.
Ties him up.
Yep, ties him up and takes his costume.
As in Punch and Judy, if you're familiar.
So he's determined to save the girl. He finds her, the girl that's been missing. She leads him through the cave on the run to get out, but
And then nonchalantly just goes back to the village.
yeah, let's just say the Islanders had a very different plan for him the whole time.
Well, he was suspecting that this girl would be the virgin sacrifice, and it turns out that he is.
It was a vetting trap the whole time. They
the
wanted
person had to be a virgin.
Yep.
They had to
come willingly.
come willingly to the island, and there was one
Right.
more criteria. Maybe it was the sobriety thing, but he fit all those criteria, and they laid that out for us in the first 2 acts of the film that he was fitting these criteria.
And of course, it all ends with a very bizarre, unsettling musical number.
yes.
Well, some of the parading costumed characters in this are straight out of Fever Dreams.
Yeah,
It visually very striking film. The actual construction of the Wicker Man itself is pretty awesome. And
Yeah.
that, of course, led to the symbol of the Burning Man that we know from the Burning Man Festival and the effigy. Should we talk about the remake at all?
you may as well right now.
A very ill-conceived remake starring Nicolas Cage. And the thing that stands out the most from that is I guess a deleted scene or a DVD extra scene where he becomes covered in bees and he screams about the bees.
Not the bees.
Yeah. But definitely not a good remake. You should just stick to the original.
Yep.
He cold cocks a woman in one scene.
He
too.
does.
Yeah.
It's just not good. This one, of course, is heads above the rest. In that regard, the lesson of the movie, of course, is just be suspicious of anyone offering local apples.
Yeah.
That's the moral.
That's the moral of the
Yep.
story. So yeah, the original release, the movie was hacked down to less than 90 minutes in the UK.
And there's 3 cuts you can find of it now. There's the theatrical cut, there's the director's cut, and then there's the final cut.
And I didn't realize that Christopher Lee played such a major role in trying to get the extended cut released. Like, he worked for years and years. There are interviews where he talks about this, and fortunately he lived long enough to actually see the full version released in 2013. Is that correct?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yep.
And so yeah, you get a lot more context and a lot more background of the story. Of course, Christopher Lee wanted this role because up until then he was kind of pigeonholed into those Hammer horror movies
Yep.
where he was a monster or adjacent to a monster kind
And
of
it's
thing.
a really strategic choice to make that he did this film because it's still horror,
Right.
but he's getting his foot outside of the door a little bit instead of the opposite. So he's staying in that recognizable genre of horror, but giving a performance that has a little bit more depth, a little bit more mystery to it.
Right.
There's an interesting point in the documentary that we talked about earlier when they're discussing the Wicker Man, where they're kind of like contemplating whether this is based on real events or not. Not the story's not based on real events, but whether the idea of the Wicker Man, the huge man-shaped wicker structure that you set on fire with a sacrifice inside of it, and they make the point that like it's unclear whether this actually happened or whether it was like Roman propaganda against like the Celtic tribes and whatnot. So probably somewhere in the middle if I had to guess, but that's kind of a interesting,
right, because we only get the Roman side
nugget
of things when we read the history, because the Celts didn't have their scribes that left behind, so we only get the Roman.
So what we think of
things.
as the Wicker Man tradition and what this movie's based on may or may not be based on actual, Celt rituals or on like
propaganda.
Yeah, Roman smears of.
But
of
once
them,
again, we've got that backdrop of the old gods versus the new Christian faith.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and also, I think it's very intentional choice to make Howie, an authority figure, because he comes in assuming that he can bully people around and establish
Flashing the badge.
Yes, exactly. He's the law. He threatens them, people at multiple times about throwing them in jail, and they kind of play along with it and stuff. But
dude, you're on an island.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep. And he slowly realizes that he's doesn't have the
literally
control
and
that he.
figuratively on an island.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think from the word go, though, you can tell that these people don't take his authority at all seriously.
Yeah, they don't respect his authority.
Like the old men are like basically like elbowing each other in the ribs the whole time that he's talking to the harbor master, and then once he gets into the pub and he starts questioning people, they don't give a shit because they're just like still like canoodling with the women in the background. There's like a girl sitting in this guy's lap, and they're completely unfazed by the fact that there's a cop asking questions of people.
And you get that folk horror setup where you realize at some point that everybody knows what's going on except for him, So that also adds to the the horror, I guess.
Yeah, everybody's in it. Everybody was in on it the whole time. And we'll talk about Midsommar in the next episode, but I think it borrows heavily from this movie in that same fashion because all the strange things that are going on. Everybody's like, "Oh, this is just the festival. It's just the way we do it. It's fine. It's fine." But then the curtain pulls back. That's kind of what happens in this movie so effectively.
I think that modern filmmaker Edgar Wright does a really good job of tapping into that dynamic. Where everybody around you is in the know, but you're not, especially in Hot Fuzz and The World's End, both of those.
They all have that like Rosemary's Baby moment where you're like, oh shit, everyone's in a cult. Yeah.
And as part of the ruse, they always allow the protagonists to have their feelings of superiority over them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And play into it even, and kind of have an aw shucks almost attitude towards him.
Literally giving them enough rope to hang themselves.
Exactly.
Definitely a recommend, though. Good movie.
100% a recommend.
It's a great film. It's a great horror movie, and if you want to delve into folk horror and it's something you haven't seen a whole lot of, this is the place to start.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a couple of the other movies that we're going to talk about came out around the same time. Wicker Man was 73. So The Blood on Satan's Claw, Witchfinder General were both preceded it.
Yeah.
But this one, like Shawn said earlier, kind of crystallizes it. And it's not the first ever folk horror, but I would say it is the quintessential one.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And if there is a furniture salesman out there selling rattan chairs and papassans, and you're not calling your store the Wicker Man, you have missed the boat.
Good call.
I got some fun facts.
Please hit us.
All right, so the Evil Eye rowing boat, which takes Sergeant Howie to and from his plane, was not constructed for the movie. It actually belonged to a resident of Plockton, the village where they were doing the shoot. Upon seeing it, the producers decided it would suit the movie. The boat survived until 2004 when it was destroyed by a storm. Also, Christopher Lee paid out of his own pocket to do the press tour for this movie. He was especially the U.S. press tour, he wanted to make sure that he stopped in all of the hubs in the U.S. and promoted this film. That's how much he believed in it, and he considers it one of his best post-Hammer roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very important to him. He wanted to change his career trajectory, and so it makes sense that he would kind of pay out of his own pocket to make sure this movie did as well as it did, or at least help its chances out of the gate. So yeah, that's Wicker Man.
Yep. Great music in it as well that we didn't really talk about. Like there are scenes when we see sort of the ritual of the innkeeper's daughter doing her love making with the virgins, where there's this guy with they break into a bar song with this gentleman with curly hair and a very lovely voice singing a kind of folk nature based song. So
yeah, I mean, you got
great
that song,
music
you've
as well.
got her song when he's on the other side of the wall. Then, of course, you've got the big finale song with
Yep.
with this goofy,
I know,
arms back and forth kind of thing from the people. And
Yep.
Christopher Lee actually looks kind of silly in that whole scene. But it's
well, that's
so
I think what
good.
makes it unsettling though, because of what they're they're joyous.
They're
in that
joyous, and
moment.
he's got staring death in the face. And
He's like, "Oh God, oh Jesus Christ!"
yep, saying his final prayers, and being surrounded by barnyard animals in the Wicker Man setup. Oh my gosh, so
Yep.
good.
He's in the fool's outfit.
Yep,
The whole
perfect.
time.
Well, then let's take a break, and we'll come back and talk about our individual picks, but not before we say, let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves some
Jujubes.
not the bees.
You had to set it up earlier with the reference.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
Well, it's the Reinheitsgebot is the
Brewery.
no, that's the German purity law,
Oh, okay.
I think. Hey, we're back, and I cracked open a beer from the Oktoberfest collection from Costco. It's like a whole bunch of German beers, almost like an advent calendar, where you just pop them out. And we were trying to decipher the.
I'm sure that there is an advent calendar for beer.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a
There's an
calendar.
advent
If
calendar
their
for
slogan isn't "Take it one day at a time,"
All right, so we're going to continue on with our individual picks, and Joey, you're going to lead off.
I'm going to lead off with a movie that's kind of been on my radar for a while. And originally I had chosen another film, which I think someone else is going to pick up that mantle instead. But I chose to do this one for reasons, which I will discuss, I guess, when someone else brings the other film up later. But this is The White Reindeer. It's Finnish, 1952, directed by Eric Blomberg. Finnish director. Most international audiences probably wouldn't be familiar with the other films in his filmography, but there is one that looks kind of interesting. It's called Hunting Miss Europe, and it's described as a rom-com utilizing footage of the Miss Europe pageants.
Oh my!
So I don't. Yeah, again, I haven't seen it. I just saw it on Letterboxd this morning. That's something kind of interesting. The White Reindeer is set in Lapland, which is sort of a nebulous territory inhabited by the Sami people, called Lapps usually in English, in northern Scandinavia, Finland, Sweden, Norway, parts of Russia as well.
a very barren region.
Yeah, it's very tundra-esque, I guess. This, I think, is pure folk horror, I would call it, because it is set based among those people, and it's based directly on a Sami folktale about a mythical creature or a supernatural creature called the White Reindeer. We have a young woman here. She gets married, a smoking hot young woman.
She was gorgeous.
By the way, yeah. She gets married to a hotshot reindeer herder from out of town.
The term that there's a hotshot reindeer herder.
And they have just a torrid love story. It's filmed very tastefully, but you can tell that there's some hard fucking going on here. Until it comes time to move the reindeer out of town, and her new husband, she feels like he abandons her.
It's
but,
just his job.
Honey, it's my job. You know what I mean? Somebody's got to herd the reindeer.
She
you know?
gets lonely.
Yeah.
So much so that she seeks a shaman.
Yeah, she desperate for love and attention. She seeks the help of a shaman who appeals to the local stone god to make her milkshake bring all the boys to the yard. But there's a catch with stuff like this. There's always a catch, and it kind of plays on those whole "be careful what you wish for."
The monkey's paw.
Yeah, and also don't fuck with the old gods kind of tropes. She's supposed to sacrifice the first living thing that she sees when she leaves the shaman's hut to the stone god. And I won't give away too much here, but she reneges on that promise. And instead, she sacrifices her beloved pet, white reindeer. And then, I guess, in retribution for her disobedience, the stone god basically turns her into this creature from Lapland or folklore, the white reindeer. Kind of comes somewhere between werewolf
and skinwalker
and
vampire,
skinwalker, on that spectrum somewhere. And just it's a very simple kind of, it's like, I would call it a fable almost. It's like a horror fable.
It's just over an hour. It's an easy watch on Tubi.
And it's a really interesting movie for a lot of reasons.
It's
like,
a travelogue.
It's very much, it's set in an actual place, and I'm sure that there's a lot of whitewashing going on, especially with the actors and whatnot.
and the title
that we would that we would be more aware of if we were more in tune with this culture. But it is, seemingly from my outside point of view, a very earnest attempt to do justice to this culture and set like a folktale set in it. And it's just beautifully shot. It's not like Kurosawa, like just, every scene is dripping with, but the landscape shot beautifully well. It's used very well in the film.
Yeah.
It's
the fact that it's shot in Lapland and in the wintertime, everything's covered in snow, and the fact that it's a black and white film lends itself to contrast.
Yeah, and it does a lot with that. And also, it struck me as I was watching this movie, there's a scene in here which isn't all that consequential to the plot. It's kind of early on in their relationship when they're kind of flirting, and there's a reindeer sled race. Basically, they're racing in these like sleds that are pulled by reindeer, teams of maybe 2 or 3 reindeer. And it struck me like this is from an era when if you wanted to film a damn caribou race, you staged a fucking caribou race,
right?
There's there wasn't CGI,
and there's no statement at the end of the film saying no animals were harmed in the making of this film. Like they're literally wrestling reindeer down to the ground by their antlers.
Yeah, and it all feels very authentic and very. It's just
speaking of the reindeer and the antlers. Did you notice that several of the domesticated reindeer only had antlers on one side?
I noticed that.
That's because they shed them every year.
Okay, so they had just shed half.
Yeah.
I was wondering if maybe it was a thing where if they had them in a team, they would cut off the antler on the inside so they weren't like
clanking,
rattling antlers.
getting tangled.
They mention at some point someone is selling a reindeer to someone else, and they say something. I just got him 2 weeks ago, and he's already dropped his antlers or something like that at some point.
Okay.
So I think it's sort of like, I guess in this culture, like they're not currency exactly, but you kind of are who you are based on how many reindeer you have, and there's all that's with the status symbols and whatnot too. But I don't know. I like this movie. I've been putting off watching it for a long time. Glad that I finally did. It's a really cool, like Shawn said, travelogue.
I want one of those hats.
Ethnographic kind of take. Yeah, the costumes.
Those hats are awesome.
Just a very interesting movie. I would say pure folk horror fable almost.
Yeah. It's easy to follow because it does kind of go along with that whole werewolf / vampire type story.
It also has, we talked about earlier, it's folk horror just by virtue of it being set in this culture and based on this culture's folktales, but it also has that element of the outsider too, because, and you might miss this if you're not paying close attention, but the husband is not from around there.
Yep.
They mention a couple of times like, oh, these Southerners, they don't understand something. So he's very much living in this culture, but he's kind of an outsider too, and he marries into it and doesn't I guess, really understand the depths of what he's gotten himself into.
He doesn't understand how much he needs to stay at home.
I have another question. I watched some of this today on Tubi, but I didn't get to catch everything. I noticed that for some of the violent parts, they would just cut away and not show it. Mm-hmm. How did they handle, because I didn't get to see this, how did they handle the transformation between human and deer form?
Off camera.
Off camera, okay.
When she comes to, she asks to be, or the shaman tells her that he will make her irresistible to the reindeer herders. And when she turns into the white reindeer, she is. And she's just like, it's not like a were creature, it's an actual white reindeer. And she lures them into this place called Evil Valley.
Don't go there.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then they're following her almost in this transfixed kind of state. The camera usually pans to them, and like you see their expression, and they turn back, and she's, sitting there looking all sultry and, sort of with the come hither thing, and they start making out, and then she kind of opens her mouth vampire style, and then the camera pans away.
Yeah, 1952, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Typical for the time. Not very graphic at all.
But effective.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I quite liked the movie. I thought it was a good example of very early folk horror. Fun fact?
They're very brief. This was the first film from Finland to compete in the prestigious Cannes Film Festival, and it's the only Finnish film to have won a Golden Globe. I guess even up until now.
Wow.
Or up until that trivia section is written on IMDb.
All right, then let's jump to Todd. I'm dying to hear what your take is on
Okay.
Pinda's Fin.
Yes.
Which sounds like a Guillermo del Toro title.
Yeah, and I will explain the title here momentarily.
Before you begin, I just wanted to mention, I like to think about plate of shrimp moments that happen frequently in relation to this podcast. And when Todd first started talking about this movie, I thought that I wasn't familiar with the word fin, right? And so I thought that he was saying Pinda's Fin, meaning there was a director named Pinda, and the movie was Fin. But if you just said, I'm watching Fin, nobody would know what the fuck you were talking about. Since then, once I looked up the definition of the word Fin, I'm not going to get into it. It comes up everywhere that I
Plate of shrimp.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. Like I'm reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy right now, and that word's on like they march through a fin on like every page.
Cool.
Nice. Okay, so Pinda's Fin. So this was actually not originally theatrically released. It was part of a BBC anthology series
So we're
called
TV
Play.
shows now?
Well, it's feature length, and it
Hour
was
29,
for
something like that.
yeah. And it was a series called Play for Today that kind of similar to something like The Twilight Zone or something, but a lot of the episodes were sort of folk horror based. The BBC had a lot of productions of this sort during that era.
Play as in teleplay.
Teleplay, correct. Robin Redbreast is another one that's really good. Brimstone and Treacle, which stars a young Sting in 1980, is another example of this. But a lot of good ones from that era. This one came out in 1974, and it was directed by a guy named Alan Clark, who directed a lot of these films from that era. There was another series that came on the BBC during this time called Ghost Stories for Christmas that would come on annually. He directed a lot of those. And so in any case, Pinda's Fin is set in a small village called Penvin, which is in Worcestershire. Is that how you pronounce it? In England?
Worcestershire.
I think that's the wrong one.
Worcestershire.
I think that's
Worcestershire.
yes, something like that.
A1.
Yes, but it's kind of remote, and this is where the fin part comes in. So I didn't know what a fin was either. It's a wetland that takes thousands of years to develop, and so this is an important part of the theme of the film. It relies on groundwater input and requires thousands of years to develop, and cannot easily be restored once destroyed.
Okay.
Which is an important element, I think.
Don't drain the fin.
Yes.
Apparently, the distinction is that a bog is alkaline, whereas a fin is a wetland that is acidic.
There you go.
Interesting.
Pinda is a reference to King Pinda from the 7th century, and he was one of the last pagan Anglo-Saxon kings. And so this is where our pagan element comes in. And so Penvin is a real village that's situated in this kind of area, remote, And it focuses on a protagonist named Stephen, who is nearing his 18th birthday, and his father is the local priest in this area. Now, his father is kind of an interesting guy. Doesn't really seem to hold firm to the beliefs of the Catholic Church.
He challenges his own beliefs.
Correct.
In a lot of the dialogue.
Yes, which is kind of interesting.
Whereas his son is really devout.
Correct. His son is very devout initially, but his son starts having these weird dreams, or are they dreams or visions? We don't always know, of these weird-looking gargoyle-type creatures. He has a dream one night where he wakes up and there's this gargoyle-looking creature sitting on his stomach, and it's very realistically portrayed. It's a very cool scene, I think. There are, things going on outside his bedroom window that are kind of interesting. But one thing that we find out about Stephen gradually as things move along is that he is in the closet.
Deep in the closet.
Battling with this. We figure it out. He doesn't quite know. He has a crush on a local, I guess he delivers milk. This guy that's probably a little bit older than him. And he sniffs it out. It kind of bullies him a little bit. But in any case, so Stephen, what it turns out, his family has a secret to tell him, which it turns out that he has been adopted. During the film, Stephen sees this couple in the newspaper who were supposed to be the quintessentially British couple. Meanwhile, he continues to have these visions of, the Pinda element of this starts coming forward. Again, he was one of the last pagan kings. And then towards the end of the film, he has a vision of this quintessentially British couple that he saw in the paper coming towards him, hearkening him to become one of them. So in other words, he, in addition to having his sort of battle with his sexuality as he's turning 18, he's been this devout British person, Catholic person, but now when he finds out what his actual heritage is, he starts having these visions that cause him to pull back and forth. And so a vision of Pinda, the king, pops up at the end, and he actually chooses to go with that side of things. Now, what does that mean exactly is left up for debate. And even Clark himself, the director, says he doesn't have a firm view of this, that he wanted a lot of it to be kind of left up to interpretation for a variety of reasons. One was just it's a little more unsettling. He did an interview where he kind of discusses that. But what you see in this film, though, is this sort of conflict between modernity and someone who wants to be a part of that, but who quintessentially is not that, even though they want to be. Stephen wants to be part of the, what would you call it, the mainstream society, I guess you would say. But that's not who he is. And he's battled against that. And by the end of the film, he's kind of moving towards acceptance of that. And we see a variety of scenes where he's just kind of the oddball, the fish out of water, even though he lives in the community and is part of the community. Everyone knows he's kind of strange. He talks about one of his visions during class, and everyone is looking at him like he's very weird.
Because he is.
Yes, he is. He's a strange kid.
The thing that gets me about this movie is that it taps into something that I personally find terrifying, and I find young people, like conservative teenagers.
Oh yeah,
something like conservative,
Young
very devout,
Republicans.
adamant teenagers. Something about that freaks me the fuck out.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't really know.
The thing that impressed me about this movie, being 1974 as a TV movie, no less, was the fact that some of the themes that they were tackling with this guy's sexual identity and his sexual awakening. I was like, wow, this was on TV in England at the time.
And this is you got this is the country that had the video nasties just
very
around the
highly
corner.
censored, very highly censored culture.
But it shows you and this is kind of fits in, though. You can get away with stuff by the censors if you do it through metaphor, like Rod Serling famously talked about with the Twilight Zone. Most of his early stuff was not science fiction horror, but he figured out that he could sneak certain themes past the censors if he couched it in metaphor and in genre. And so that's what this film does beautifully. Another thing, I mean, the film is beautifully shot too. Just the countryside itself is just beautiful and lusciously rendered. And then there are also these unsettling shots when Stephen has his visions of the gargoyles and of King Penda. The scene where he is accosted by the quintessential British couple, who we don't get a name for, but they're supposed to represent that. It kind of reminds me of something from David Lynch or something, where they're coming towards him. And I found it very effectively unsettling. I like just a really good film.
I like the old school Doctor Who-esque creature designs too, for the angels and demons.
Very much made of foam.
Yeah.
Yep. But it worked, I thought.
Yeah, they were surreal enough to be unsettling.
Right. And the music, there's a scene, too, that's kind of strange. Elgar's music, the composer, is all throughout the movie. Steven's a big fan of his, and there's actually a scene...
Stephen, please.
Yes. There's actually a scene where Stephen encounters the deceased ghost of him in a... abandoned house, and talks to him and has a conversation with him. So that's another, element that this kind of classical music. But in any case,
This is a strange movie.
it's a very strange.
The whole time I'm watching, I'm like, I can't believe this got made for TV.
Oh yeah,
74.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would recommend checking it out. I would also recommend go down the rabbit hole with some of these BBC 70s
Compilation.
They're most of them are on YouTube. You can find, and they're not of bad quality. Robin Redbreast, I mentioned, is another unsettling one, almost an Invasion of the Body Snatchers folk type thing. I almost did that one instead, and some other ones. So
There's a handful of similar things that are mentioned in the folk horror documentary. I forget the writer's name off the top of my head, but there's a whole series of Christmas ghost stories, basically, that were done for British TV.
Yep.
And I've watched some of those before this without even knowing what they were really, and they're pretty good too.
Yep. Yeah, Alan Clark, the director, directed a number of those.
Fun fact.
Fun fact, and this is a statement from the writer, David Rudkin, and even this seems fairly ahead of its time, considering that now we're so steeped in references to the multiverse or the metaverse. Writer David Rudkin explained that the drama explores several simultaneous contradictory dimensions of reality, including shared and unshared realities. So I thought that was really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you get that sense where you don't know if you're in a dream of Stephen's, if it's like we're supposed to think it's actually happening. There is that,
little blurred line there.
It was happening, but inside of a snow globe.
Yes.
All right, thank you for that. Travis, you're up with yours.
All right, so I've got another early film. This is from 1960. It's directed by Ingmar Bergman, not to be confused with Ingrid Bergman. It's called The Virgin Spring, and it's got an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. We've got devout Christians, Tor and Merta, played by Max von Sydow and Brigitte Valberg, who send their only daughter, the virginal Karin, played by Birgitta Pedersen, and their foster daughter. In some cases, they refer to her as a foster daughter, sometimes as a servant. Nonetheless, the pregnant Ingeri, played by Gunnel Lindblom, to deliver candles to a distant church. On their way through the woods, the girls encounter a group of savage goat herders who brutally rape and murder Karin as Ingeri remains hidden. When the killers unwittingly seek refuge in the farmhouse of Tor and Merta, Tor plots fitting revenge. So, in the traditional sense and in the folk horror sense, this is not a scary movie. It's not a traditional horror. It is a rape revenge horror. Very much like Wes Craven's, it was at 1970s? 72 film Last House on the Left.
Right.
Which, if you go back and watch that, yes, it is disturbing. Yes, it is horrific, but it's not a traditional horror.
Right.
But yeah, so we've got the setup for this rape revenge. And you can really break this movie down into 3 acts. You've got Act 1, The Journey and Omen. In medieval Sweden, wealthy Christian landowner Per Tor sends his daughter Karin on a day-long journey to deliver candles to the church. Now, Karin's very spoiled. She's kind of spoiled by her mother and her father in different ways.
Yeah, she starts out pretending to be sick
and sleeping in, and while Ingrid is doing all the chores. She is joined by, not Ingrid, Ingeri, a pregnant servant who secretly clings to the Old Norse faith and worships Odin. As they ride through the forest, Ingeri grows uneasy, especially when they stop at a sinister mill by a stream. There she encounters a mysterious one-eyed man who claims to perceive hidden truths and tempts her with forbidden power. Now the mill keeper is supposed to be Odin in disguise. Terrified by his advances, Ingeri flees, while Karin, dismissing Ingeri's warnings, continues alone on her path towards the forest. Then we go to Act 2, Violence in the Woods. Karin encounters 3 herdsmen, 2 men and a young boy, and innocently invites them to share her lunch. What begins as a gesture of Christian kindness turns tragic when the 2 men brutally rape and murder her, while the boy, overcome with guilt, fails to intervene. From a distance, Ingeri witnesses the horror but is powerless to stop it. I would say powerless is kind of a reach. She chooses not to stop it. She has a rock in her hand at one point that she's going to throw at the herdsman, and she just kind of lets it
I think the odds
drop.
are stacked against her.
Definitely. She was outnumbered. But she also was very jealous of Karin.
True.
And later tells Tor that she wished for it to happen.
Feeding into the folk aspect of it.
Afterwards, the herdsmen take Karin's clothes and leave the body behind, the remorseful boy hesitating before fleeing with them. Unwittingly, the 3 seek refuge for the night at the home of Karin's parents, which brings us to Act 3, Retribution and Redemption. That evening, the herdsmen attempt to sell Karin's clothes to her mother, Merta, exposing their crime. While they sleep, Merta locks them in, and Tor learns the truth from a distraught Ingeri, who confesses her jealousy and guilt. Enraged, Tor extracts brutal vengeance at dawn, killing all 3 herdsmen while his wife watches in horror. The following day, the family and servants search for Karin's body. Upon finding her, Tor collapses in grief and prays for divine forgiveness, vowing to build a church where she fell. And this is where it gets a little bit on the nose. As they lift her body, a pure spring wells up from the ground, an emblem of grace and cleansing. Ingeri washes herself in the sacred water, signaling spiritual renewal and tragedy, which I could have done without that kind of blatant symbolism. When I saw the title, I thought it was referring to spring as in a time of year or just a rebirth in general.
I wonder if that the pun there holds in Norwegian.
Maybe, but the movie is set in winter, not spring. So it is a good movie, structurally very sound. It's got a really strong performance, especially in the father, and also in the kind of adopted servant girl. I think those are the 2 really standout performances in this.
Occupies a weird place in Bergman's filmography too, because it's not like you think of like all those kind of cerebral, philosophical,
The Seventh Seal
dramas. Yeah.
This one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So like I said, not a traditional horror, but definitely worth a watch and a well-made film. Had any of you seen this?
Yes.
No,
Okay.
watched it in preparation for the episode
Okay.
though.
So yeah, it on its face, it's pretty good. Fun fact: the bridge keeper, played by Axel Slengus, clearly is supposed to be Odin. Besides his comments about recognizing Ingeri as if they've met before, suggesting he heard her prayer at the beginning of the film, there are several nods to Odinic lore. Before the bridge keeper appears, a raven is seated outside his hut. The raven was considered to be sacred to Odin, while the bridge keeper is finally shown up close, it can be seen that he is one-eyed, which is Odin's most prominent feature, having sacrificed an eye to attain wisdom. Finally, when Ingiri sits in the high seat, she suddenly has seemingly clairvoyant hearing. This is a nod to Odin's high seat, Hildstaff, which I'm butchering that pronunciation, from which he could see all things happening in the world. Question: do you think that butchers resent the fact that we use their occupation in the pejorative? He really butchered that.
I don't know. If you make your living chopping up animal bodies,
Yeah.
this kind of just comes with the territory, I
Right.
think, you know?
That's a good idea for a character.
The butcher?
A really sensitive butcher who's
Yeah.
like just,
But my cuts are so precise.
he has moral conflict about what he's doing and
Yeah.
wonders if people think ill of him. All right, very good. All right, so mine is going to be kind of a twofer because originally Joey was going to talk about the blood on Satan's claw, and that and The Wicker Man and the other film I'm going to discuss, Witchfinder General, are considered to be the three pillars,
The heavy hitters.
of folk horror, especially when it comes to British folk horror.
And incidentally, Witchfinder General is a cabinet position in the Trump administration.
Yes. I wonder who's going to occupy that role.
And a new wave of British heavy metal band.
This Witchfinder General was made in 1968. It was directed by Michael Reeves, who incidentally died a few months after the release of the film
Witch!
from alcohol and barbiturate overdose. So, no, it was not a witch. It was a bitch. Starring Vincent Price in the titular role, Hilary Dwyer, Robert Russell, Paul Ferris. A disturbing tale of evil set during the English Civil War when Matthew Hopkins is appointed Witchfinder General by the Puritans under Cromwell. He is empowered to travel the countryside with his henchmen to collect a fee for each witch from whom they extract a confession, a policy which is exploited to the full. Based on a Edgar Allan Poe story, this movie plays like a Hammer horror film.
Yeah.
It feels like it was made right in step with those movies. Not much like Travis's film, not really a horror movie, but horrific things happen in the movie.
There's no supernatural element,
No.
and that's why I think it's odd that it's considered one of the pillars of folk horror.
Yeah, but
It's
it does
almost
Well,
the opposite.
Neither is there in The Wicker Man, though, because the horror all comes from...
The people.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, there's
well,
no-
that's a good point. There's no supernatural element. Well, there might be, but
Well, they're
there's at least,
sacrificing
but there's a,
him too,
but there's
yeah.
a,
but it
pagan
speaks-
religious thing
Yeah, but this
going on.
speaks to a time when people were very superstitious and
Yes.
very quick to point the finger at people. Something bad happened to me. It must have been a witch. It must have been that
So
person who I
instead of-
don't like who put a curse on me.
Instead
Yes,
of
yes.
a supernatural element, there's the horror of people's reaction to what they think is a
Yeah,
supernatural
there
element.
is a supernatural backdrop in that. There's
yeah, it's not right to say
superstition.
supernatural. It's usually though either supernatural or
Yeah.
some sort of pagan.
Yeah.
Their
thing.
belief in the supernatural is
yes.
what is horrific.
But
There
that
you go.
said, I
That's
do
true.
I do
That's
find this
true.
to be the weaker of the three pillars when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to this. When we think of traditional folk horror, plus also I personally have a hard time anytime I see Vincent Price playing a butch role.
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy it. And in this movie, you know, he shows up at this preacher's house and he captures the preacher, and his niece is left behind at the castle / house, and somehow convinces the Witchfinder General not to torture his her uncle in exchange, presumably for sex.
Yeah, he didn't seem that interested in it, or he didn't sell that like he
Yeah,
like he
exactly.
should have.
Yeah,
in a
it's-
convincing way.
But
That's
you know,
a good point.
every night though, he's like, "I've got to go back to the house to interrogate her," and his henchman is like, "Okay, boss," but he's like getting kind of frustrated because he's like, he's getting laid. That
Interrogator
motherfucker.
good.
Yeah, and so he starts. The henchman gets jealous, of course, and then he steps in and things go sideways. All the while, the actress that we're talking about, she has a secret marriage with a knight, not really a knight, a crusader or whatever he would be considered in this time, during the Civil War, a soldier, and he comes back at the express orders of his superiors. Don't go chasing after this. We need you on the front lines for this, that, and the other.
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
But he does come back because he knows that his wife is in danger, and he knows that this witch finder is basically abusing his power. He's abusing his role. And it comes down to your typical witch trial, so to speak. And suspense, I guess, would be probably the proper term versus horror.
Okay.
In this, you have a suspenseful ending of trying to decide if they're going to survive and live, and will Vincent Price and his henchmen get their comeuppance in the end.
Right.
Do you want my fun fact for that
Go
one?
ahead.
The real Matthew Hopkins was only in his mid-20s in 1645 and died before he was 30. Vincent Price's character is well into middle age, like the actor himself. Hopkins and Stern executed more than 300 people, mainly women, during their 2 or 3 years of witch hunting, considering that about 500 people in total were executed for witchcraft in England between the late 15th and late 18th centuries. This means Hopkins was responsible for 2/3 of these executions during a period of 3 years.
He's very good at his job.
Mm-hmm. Efficient.
Killing is my business, and business is good. All right, so yes, as we mentioned, I'm going to talk briefly about The Blood on Satan's Claw. Todd, you like this movie. I've heard you bring it up several times. I'm surprised you didn't leap at the opportunity.
Well, I just want you.
Directed by Piers Haggard, stars Linda Hayden, Vavavoom, Wendy Padbury, and Patrick Wymark. This summary was run through AI. I wanted to get a feminist response to this movie in terms of the summary of the plot. The Blood on Satan's Claw presents a chilling critique of patriarchal fear.
It does not.
Yes, it does.
Not.
Wrong.
Wait, let me finish. Patriarchal fear and the subsequent persecution of young women in the 17th century English village. When a terrifying remnant of a demonic entity is unearthed, the male authority figures, the morally bankrupt judge, and the rigid reverend immediately project their... This is so heavily written. They immediately project their anxieties and repressed desires onto the burgeoning coven of local youth, primarily teenage girls. These girls, initially seeking agency and escape from their restrictive society through dark occult rituals, quickly become victims of a brutal witch hunt fueled by male paranoia and an obsession with the controlling female sexuality and independence. Mm-hmm. The film, in this light, highlights how male-dominated structures use accusations of witchcraft as a tool to repress and violently punish female transgression and burgeoning self-determination.
Yep. Joey incorrectly interpreted all of that.
ChatGPT is not great at nuance.
I asked it to make it a very clear feminist slant.
Well, before Joey goes into, I will defend that interpretation, and then Joey can rebut it. We are not supposed to the witchfinder general in this case, for lack of a better term, is not somebody that we're meant to sympathize with or think is a good guy. We're given no material in which to make that interpretation. Even the priest, he's kind of an asshole throughout most of the movie. I don't think we're supposed to sympathize with him per se. Now, it is subtle. It's not beating you over the head with that sort of interpretation. But I think given the time frame coming out of the 1960s into 70, it's a natural sort of film to be made about the paranoia surrounding the sexual revolution and feminism. Joey?
I just think that several things here. One, it bothers me. This movie bothers me. And I do think that we're not supposed to necessarily like them or pull for them. I'm speaking of the priest and the wealthy landowner. But this movie is inherently pro-establishment, which is disappointing because I thought going into it that it was going to be much like what ChatGPT has described. I read it the entirely different way. This is a movie that in which there are several violent gang rapes of children. And we all know that when that kind of thing happens in real life, it is the priest. and it is the wealthy old white man landowner and not a bunch of hippies in the woods doing that kind of thing. In this movie, yes, those authority figures are unlikable in the extreme, but it definitely 100% sides with them. Because
not 100%.
The cult members here, led by Angel, are awful. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you have to live with one of those two extremes, I'm going to choose the establishment in this film. And I think that this movie just misses the mark and misses its chance.
I think
the men are awful too, though. I mean, it's definitely not cut and dry. I mean, they're not like a lovely hippie.
Here's my take on it. I think that you're giving the film too much credit, because I think that they just wanted to be scandalous.
Yeah.
Part of it is definitely just exploitation. For sure.
Exactly. I find the film itself to be at its core exploitive, in that it's like, wow, Angel's hot. Mm-hmm. Look at those eyes. She's gorgeous. Look at those tits. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. And as I wrote in my review, Preacher has a lot more resolve than I do. She would have recruited a new member in me.
Right.
The scene where she basically takes all her clothes off and like offers herself to him, and he's like, he kicks her out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like on the surface, this movie's awesome. It exists somewhere between like B movie.
It's a Grindhouse kind of film.
Yeah,
it's almost a creature feature when you actually see the devil. It looks ridiculous.
Nice fursuit.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere between B movie, Grindhouse, and like kind of like serious witchy folk horror. It exists somewhere there, and on the surface it's great, but I do have serious philosophical.
Well, so I think that you're right, and it's fair to point out I like those salacious, like the cults doing the rape scenes. I don't think you're supposed to like any of them. I also think it's not. Obviously, the director wasn't necessarily doing a treatise of Ingmar Bergman type film. But I don't think it's 100% like, oh, we got to pull for we have the leering old men, we have the salacious, loose women, and that's baked into an exploitation sort of movie that's filtered through the sexual revolution of the 60s and the paranoia out of that, etc.
One of my favorite characters in the movie, and he didn't have any speaking parts, was the perverted old man that was in the cult. He's always in the background, just kind of,
right.
Yeah,
it wasn't a purely teen cult, by the way. Now, those were the main actors that we see there. They did recruit some,
old folks.
Old folks, yeah. In any case.
It's an equal opportunity cult.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun one. I kind of, like I said, I don't think it's as intentional one way or the other. I think it's just meant to be movie fun. And
I mean, there's a little bit of all of that. I mean, I don't think when you hear the director talk about the film, he acknowledges some of the exploitation elements, but he does give some I mean, it's kind of a little bit of all of it's there. I mean, usually when you talk to these exploitation directors, they acknowledge that their producers are pressuring them to make a buck. They've been hired to do that. But also they do try to bake in some actual storytelling elements that are going to come from their own,
commentary.
So of those big three, the Wicker Man, Witchfinder General, and Blood on Satan's Claw, how would you rank them?
Oh, the Wicker Man's top
for
me.
sure.
Easily.
And then
Blood on Satan's Claw.
Blood on Satan's Claw. Then Witchfinder.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that would be
100%.
Right.
That's my feel. Old school. Mm-hmm. So we're going to come back in 2 weeks with new school. These are
some interesting ones.
Blair Witch, Book of Shadows,
year 2000 plus, which we'll get into it. There was a bit of a resurgence in folk horror.
Well, Guillermo del Toro is a huge factor in that. I think that's his bread and butter.
I think Ari Aster.
Yeah, that too.
Huge,
more recently.
It's right around 2010, 2011. I think, which we'll get deeper into it in the episode, but I think that for some reason, folk horror really, really took off in earnest in this era.
And when you mention Ari Aster, I mean, Midsommar is the big one that people think of, but Hereditary is really folk horror as well.
Just as much, So we'll get into all that. So please tune in and check it out. I think we're right at an hour. Does anybody have any plugs that they want to talk about? No plugs.
Trivia's on hiatus at the moment.
Yeah. When's it coming back?
On the 22nd.
Okay. So right around the time we release the next episode. Okay, good deal. Please rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and check us out on all the social medias. We're Cinema Chop Shop everywhere except for YouTube and Blue Sky. We're Cinema Chop Shop Podcast. And tell your friends you love them, and do kind things for total strangers, and just be nice. The world needs it. And remember, too,
Watch, Shop, Retrofit.